Welcome back to another explainer. So, you know that feeling of writer's block? Like when you're just staring at a blank page and it feels like an actual curse? Well, today's protagonist takes that to a literally supernatural level. We're going to step into the completely eerie, yet kind of hilarious world of Elsie Brown's comedic fiction to unpack a classic piece of literature called a shady plot. Now, if you think ghost stories are all just, jump scares and haunted mansions, you are definitely in for a treat today. Brown totally flips the genre on its head. She mixes the supernatural with mundane marital misunderstandings and, weirdly enough, bureaucratic humor. Let's just dive right in. Okay, so before we even meet our main character, Elsie Brown serves up this fantastic pun right on the title page. Think about the word shady. It can literally mean, well, full of shadows, right? But it can also mean someone with a dubious, maybe questionable character. And plot? That could be a patch of ground, the storyline of a book, or a secret, potentially malicious scheme. By smashing these two words together, Brown is giving us a massive wink. We're about to get a storyline about shadows, but also a dubious secret scheme involving an actual ghost. So, what does this all mean? Based on those intersecting definitions, what do you think this narrative arc is actually going to look like? Is it going to be a literal ghost writing a literal story? Or maybe a secret scheme hidden in the shadows? Keep these dual meanings in the back of your mind as we go through the events, because it makes the author's cleverness pop so much more. Seriously, lock in your prediction right now as we move forward. To properly set the mood, the text warms us up with some classic supernatural vocabulary. First up, we've got poltergeist, a troublesome spirit that throws things around and causes a huge mess. Then there's clairvoyance, the power to perceive things way beyond our normal human senses. And then, absolutely crucially, we have the Ouija board, a spelling board device meant to communicate with the spirit world. Keep a really close eye on that last one. It is basically the most dangerous item in our entire story. Part 1, the writer's block and the strike. Let's meet our protagonist, John Hollock. He writes ghost stories for a living, but right now, he is suffering from a massive, soul-crushing case of writer's block. So John is sitting in the twilight of his office, sarcastically muttering to himself, just waiting for an idea that absolutely refuses to show up. But then, the atmosphere shifts. Right out of the shadows, an apparition starts to form. And she doesn't just pop in like magic. In this hilariously mundane detail, she materializes in sections. First an arm, then the sleeve of this stiff white shirt, then a leg, and finally a plaid skirt. This is definitely not a terrifying monster. She looks like a tall, angular woman with these huge, fishy eyes behind thick, bone-rimmed glasses. Her name, as we'll find out, is Helen. And Helen? She hasn't come to spook John. Nope. She's here to deliver a labor dispute. She drops this unbelievable line. "We're going on strike. Not another plot do you get from us." So get this. It turns out John's inspiration hasn't been his own. Helen represents a literal supernatural union called the Writers' Inspiration Bureau. Whenever John got stuck, Helen or one of her ghost buddies would lean over his shoulder and just beam ideas directly into his brain. But now, the ghosts are unionizing. They are walking off the job. It's such a brilliant twist on creative burnout. I mean, what do you do when your literal muse goes on strike? But why are they striking? Are they just tired of writing? Not at all. They are completely burned out from a brand new fad among the living. Helen explains that ghosts used to just haunt for fun, but lately humans have become totally obsessed with Ouija boards. So now, instead of happily haunting houses, these ghosts are stuck at ethereal desks working overtime as supernatural customer service reps. They're answering endless, ridiculous questions for Ouija board fanatics. They're overworked, and they are cutting off John's supply of stories until he uses his influence to get people to stop using the boards. Part 2, the Ouija board problem. So, John agrees to try and stop this Ouija board craze just to save his career. But the conflict literally walks right through his front door when his wife, Lavinia, gets back from shopping. Just as Helen is hastily demobilizing, fading out from her boots upward, Lavinia marches in, super proud of a bargain she just scored at a sale. She calls it the duckiest, darlingest thing. And what is it? A Ouija board. John is, predictably, absolutely horrified. And the irony here is just incredible. Like anyone looking for a shortcut, Lavinia bought this thing specifically to help John write. She actually suggests he use it to interview historical figures. Just casually chat up Napoleon or Helen of Troy for some local color. She's completely oblivious to the fact that her super helpful purchase is exactly what's infuriating his actual ghostwriter. John practically begs her to return it, but she stubbornly refuses. Part 3. A disastrous seance. We jumped to the next evening. John comes home from his boring day job as a lumber company bookkeeper, completely unprepared for the total chaos taking over his house. John's living room has been hijacked. Lavinia has invited her entire book club over for a massive Ouija board party. The room is packed with ladies sitting in pairs, fingers resting on those little squeaking triangular pointers. And, to make matters worse, a guest canceled, leaving this overly flirtatious woman, Miss Laura Hinkle, without a partner. Lavinia, flashing this sweet but totally punishing smile, forces John to sit down and operate the board with Miss Hinkle, a woman John mentally refers to as a flirtatious crocodile. So John sits down. He's terrified Miss Hinkle is going to cheat and make the board move. But suddenly, the board takes on a life of its own. It starts flying across the letters, spelling out this explosive message. Miss Hinkle reads it out loud. Traitor? Traitor? The board is calling John a traitor, and who's sending it? It spells out Helen. And the wildest part, across the room, every single other board is picking up the exact same broadcast. The ghosts are publicly calling John out, by name, to a room full of his wife's gossiping friends from a mysterious woman named Helen. No way this ends well. Part 4. The breaking point. This supernatural mix-up is about to trigger a massive, very human marital disaster. Let's look at how this builds, because the comedic pacing here is absolute perfection. First, the seance happens. Second, the board publicly drops the name Helen. Third, Lavinia's jealousy predictably goes through the roof. She immediately assumes John is having a secret affair with a real, living woman named Helen. Fourth, their cook, Gladolia, flat out quits because she refuses to work in a house full of dark magic and hoodoos. And finally, to top it all off, John wakes up to find Lavinia has packed her bags. The next morning, John finds this devastating little note slipped right under his office door. Dear John, I'm going back to my grandmother. My lawyer will communicate with you later. Boom! It's a crushing blow. John just sinks into his chair. His secret ghostly helper has ruined his reputation, cost him his cook, and now he's lost his wife. In total despair, he yells out to the empty room that he wishes he were dead. And right on cue, a voice replies, "That's exactly what you ought to be." The ghost is back, but guys, she is in terrible shape. The comedic timing is just brilliant. Helen has been kept up all night by the book club's frantic seance. She's so drained from answering their questions that she can barely even materialize. She just pops into view as a pair of shoes, a plaid skirt, and eventually a floating nose and a single fishy eye. And right at the exact moment John starts screaming at this half-formed spirit for ruining his life, the door swings open and Lavinia walks in with her suitcase. Talk about a cliffhanger. Lavinia is just glaring at John, barking out that she is leaving. Meanwhile, John is doing this desperate dance, trying to physically block her from seeing the exhausted, half-visible ghost of Helen floating right behind him. With his home life completely in shambles and a supernatural strike on his hands, how in the world is John Hallett going to resolve this shady plot? Well, to find out the ingenious way John gets himself out of this mess, you'll have to read the rest of Elsie Brown's amazing story. Until next time, keep questioning the shadows, and maybe just think twice before you buy a Ouija board at a bargain sale.